It was just past noon when chaos tiptoed onto the pristine forecourt of Buckingham Palace. The sky above was a crisp, cloudless blue, and the crowd was buzzing like bees around royalty's hive. Then it happened. Out of nowhere, a burst of cold water shot through the air and splashed near the boots of a stoic royal guard. The culprit? A grinning tourist with a neon green water gun in hand. The silent sentinel didn't flinch, but what followed would rewrite the day's headlines and shake the very foundation of British tradition. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Earlier that morning, 26-year-old Logan Miller had landed in London with his best friend, Drew. Hailing from Austin, Texas, Logan wasn't just your average prankster. He ran a successful YouTube channel called Pranks and Pixels, with over 3 million subscribers and a reputation for pushing the boundaries of what was funny and what was foolish. April 1st was his favorite day of the year, and this time, he wanted to pull something legendary. According to Logan, what better place than outside Buckingham Palace? And what better victim than a guard who isn't allowed to move? Dressed in a Union Jack hoodie, skinny jeans, and mirrored sunglasses, Logan was a walking cliché of the loud American tourist. But underneath the playful smirk was a calculated plan: create a viral moment, rack up the views, and cash in on the chaos. What he didn't anticipate was who he'd be targeting. Standing watch that day was Lance Corporal Thomas Hawthorne, age 31. 8 years into his military career, Thomas had served with the Coldstream Guards in both ceremonial and active combat roles. He was no stranger to high-pressure situations. 2 tours in Iraq had carved discipline into his soul. Tall, clean-cut, with a jawline sharp enough to slice paper, Thomas looked every bit the model of military precision beneath the bearskin hat and crimson tunic. Unlike his comrades, Thomas had requested to serve during April Fool's Week. He knew this time of year attracted trouble. "People think it's just standing still," he once told a colleague. "But every day in this uniform, you're defending the legacy of an entire nation." The crowd outside Buckingham Palace that day was unusually dense. Children waved miniature flags. Elderly tourists snapped photos with trembling fingers. A violinist played "God Save the Queen" nearby, adding a surreal score to the unfolding drama. Logan waited until a group of schoolchildren cleared the area before stepping forward. He grinned at his camera, which Drew had mounted discreetly on a stabilizer. "All right, guys," Logan whispered into his lapel mic. "This is the prank of the year. You're about to witness history." He unscrewed the cap of his toy water gun and filled it with mineral water. Then, slowly, deliberately, he approached the motionless guard, who stood like a marble statue under the midday sun. Logan crouched low, did a mock military crawl, and stopped just within spraying distance. The first squirt missed. It landed harmlessly near the guard's boots. A few giggles erupted from the crowd. Logan stood upright and made a dramatic bow to the audience. Then he aimed again, this time directly at the guard's knee. A clear arc of water flew across the air and hit the dark fabric of the guard's trousers. The crowd gasped, but Thomas didn't move. Not a blink, not a twitch. Logan turned to the crowd, arms raised like a victorious gladiator. "See? They're not even allowed to blink. This is unreal!" He turned back, stepped closer, and this time raised the water gun directly toward the guard's chest. His finger tightened on the trigger, but before the next drop could fly, something changed. In a movement so swift it almost blurred, Thomas shifted his weight forward and took a sharp step toward Logan. The clack of his boot echoed like thunder across the plaza. "Step back immediately," he said, his voice deep, clear, and commanding. The smile on Logan's face vanished like smoke. His hands dropped to his sides, and the water gun clattered onto the ground. The crowd went silent. For a moment, even the air seemed to pause. Logan stumbled backward, unsure whether to laugh or run. "Dude, he moved. He talked," he whispered to Drew, still filming a few steps behind. Thomas resumed his original posture just as quickly as he'd moved. But the energy had shifted. Everyone could feel it. The guard wasn't just a ceremonial statue, he was a soldier. Logan tried to save face. He turned back to the camera with a nervous grin. "Hey, just a prank, guys. No harm done, right?" But his voice cracked with unease. The crowd didn't laugh this time. Phones were out. People were recording. The prankster had become the subject. Minutes ticked by. Logan paced in a tight circle, unsure whether to leave or wait it out. He checked his phone. Notifications were already popping up, some fans cheering, others criticizing. Then the faint buzz of a radio caught his attention. Two palace security officers in dark uniforms emerged from the side gate, walking with purpose. Their expressions were unreadable, their steps synchronized. Logan looked at Drew. "Should we bounce?" But it was too late. Logan barely had time to stash the water gun into his hoodie pocket before the two officers reached him. One was tall and lean, with a radio clipped to his shoulder. The other had a clipboard in hand and a badge that gleamed under the sun. Neither looked amused. "Sir, may we speak with you for a moment?" the taller one asked, his tone polite but firm. Logan tried to chuckle it off. "Hey, yeah, no problem. Just a little April Fool's prank, nothing serious, I swear." The officer didn't smile. "Could you please step to the side, away from the crowd?" A ripple of murmurs spread through the onlookers as Logan was gently but decisively led away from the main plaza. Drew hesitated with the camera but eventually followed, unsure whether to keep filming or pretend none of this was part of the plan. A few meters away, near a wrought iron fence, the officers began their questioning. "Do you understand that interfering with Her Majesty's Guard is considered a serious offense?" the officer with the badge asked. Logan held up his hands. "Whoa! Whoa! Interfering? I didn't touch him, I just squirted a bit of water. I mean, come on, it's April Fool's Day." The shorter officer exchanged a glance with his partner. "Did you record the incident?" Logan shrugged. "Yeah, I mean, my buddy's got it all on camera, but it's just for our YouTube. It's harmless." The officer tilted his head. "Would you consider it harmless if someone came into your workplace and disrupted you while you were doing your job?" Logan didn't have an answer to that. "Look, we're not here to arrest you," the taller officer continued, "but we do need to take your information and file a formal incident report. Depending on the palace's security review, you may be issued a fine or banned from the area. Understand?" "Fine," Logan mumbled. "Whatever." Meanwhile, Lance Corporal Thomas Hawthorne had not moved, not even a muscle. Despite the brief confrontation, he remained perfectly aligned, his eyes fixed forward, his expression unreadable. But inside, his training was roaring like a battle drum. His breathing had slowed on purpose. He'd learned to do that during firewatch duty in Fallujah. Control the breath, control the moment. And though years had passed since his combat deployments, some instincts never dulled. He had recognized the water gun for what it was, but the guard's duty was not to assume, it was to respond. He waited until the prank crossed the line. Then he acted, swiftly and within the rules. Guards aren't statues. They're trained soldiers. They're armed, and they're bound by centuries of tradition, not silence. Back near the fence, Drew finally turned off the camera. "Dude," he muttered to Logan, "that was bad." Logan scowled. "It's not like I hurt anyone, come on." Drew shook his head. "I don't think that matters here. This isn't like pranking mall security in LA." The crowd had begun to thin out now, with many spectators still buzzing about the moment. Some were defending Logan's humor, others condemned it as disrespectful. But everyone agreed on one thing. They hadn't expected that from the guard. A middle-aged woman who had watched the entire event live-streamed her reaction from her phone. "I've seen these guards my whole life, and never once seen one move. That man was terrifying and brilliant. That young guy didn't know what hit him." Within an hour, footage of the event had spread across TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. The title varied depending on the platform, but the message was the same. You don't mess with the royal guard. And yet, for Logan, it wasn't over. He and Drew were escorted to a nearby holding area within the palace's public grounds, where they were asked to sit and wait. The tension in the room was as thick as the velvet curtains on the walls. Logan twitched with frustration, while Drew kept nervously checking his phone. "I swear, man, I just wanted it to be funny," Logan muttered. "Nobody got hurt." Drew didn't reply. A few minutes later, a new figure entered the room. He was older, likely in his 50s, with a straight posture and several service medals pinned neatly to his suit. His voice was calm, deliberate. "Gentlemen, I'm Commander Bennett. I oversee ceremonial conduct and public safety for palace operations." Logan sat up straighter. "Sir, I didn't mean any harm." "I'm not here to lecture you," Bennett interrupted, "but I do want to explain what you just disrupted." He pulled out a small booklet and placed it on the table between them. The cover read, "The Queen's Guard, History, Honor, Duty." For over 300 years, the Queen's, and now the King's Guards, have represented the highest form of visible discipline in this nation. Their silence isn't weakness, it's restraint. Every moment of stillness, every step they take, is done with the memory of soldiers who never came home. And today, you tried to reduce that to a punchline. Logan's mouth opened slightly, but he said nothing. Commander Bennett continued. "The man you mocked today served 2 tours in combat zones. He's lost friends in firefights, and yet, every morning, he puts on that red tunic not for himself, but for the crown, the country, and the thousands of children who come here hoping to witness something greater than themselves." The room fell quiet. "You will be released today," Bennett added, "but consider this your final warning. If another incident occurs, legal action will follow, and your footage, should you choose to upload it, will be reviewed for potential defamation of the royal institution." Logan nodded slowly. For once, his cocky persona had vanished. As they were escorted out of the palace grounds, Logan turned to Drew. "Do you think I crossed the line?" Drew didn't answer immediately. He watched a child in the distance saluting a guard, eyes wide with admiration. Then he replied, "I think you forgot what that line was." And back on post, Lance Corporal Thomas Hawthorne stood unmoved. Tourists passed, photos were taken, but those who had seen what happened gave him a wider berth, a nod of respect, or simply a lingering gaze filled with silent awe. He had done his duty, and the prankster had learned that some traditions are stronger than mockery. By the time Logan and Drew returned to their hotel room that evening, the sun had dipped behind the skyline, and a different kind of light was shining on Logan, digital spotlight. His phone buzzed relentlessly, notifications poured in. Clips of the water gun incident were now going viral. The original footage Drew had filmed hadn't even been uploaded yet, but dozens of bystanders had already beaten them to it. Some praised the guard's discipline, others mocked Logan's foolishness, and in the center of it all was one frozen frame. The moment Lance Corporal Thomas Hawthorne stepped forward, face stoic, voice thundering. "Dude, you're trending," Drew said, scrolling through his phone, "but it's not the good kind." Logan leaned over, staring at the screen. Royal Guard reacts was trending in the UK. So was Jack Watergun fail. A few thumbnails had even exaggerated the incident. American tries to attack Royal Guard, gets owned. "I didn't attack anyone," Logan muttered defensively. "I barely touched him. It was water. It's not like I threw a punch." "But you pointed something that looked like a weapon," Drew replied calmly. "And you filmed it like it was a joke. That's the problem." Logan slumped into the edge of the bed, arms crossed. "I just wanted it to be funny." For a moment, the room fell silent. Then Drew said, "Maybe it's time you stop trying to go viral and start trying to grow up." Those words stung more than the palace officers or even Commander Bennett's calm, disciplined reprimand. And for the first time in a long time, Logan didn't have a comeback. Meanwhile, inside the guards' barracks near Wellington, Thomas Hawthorne sat in silence, reviewing the incident with his superior, Sergeant Rhodes. Rhodes tapped a printed report on the table. "You handled it exactly as trained. No excessive movement. Clear verbal command. No escalation." Thomas nodded. "He just thought I wouldn't move, figured I was part of the scenery." Rhodes smirked. "They always do, until they learn." "Still," Thomas said, voice low, "I didn't expect him to bring something that looked like a firearm." "Even if it's neon green," Rhodes replied, "you didn't know what was inside it. Could have been anything." "You did right." There was a long pause. Then Rhodes added, "It's strange, isn't it? How restraint can feel more powerful than action." Thomas nodded again. He'd learned that overseas, that sometimes the loudest thing you could do was say nothing at all. Later that evening, a quiet rain began to fall across London. Logan stood by the hotel window, looking out at the shimmering streets. Something had shifted inside him. Not drastically, but undeniably. The adrenaline had worn off. The rush of mischief had faded. What remained was reflection. He opened his laptop, intending to upload the video. But instead of dragging the clip into his editing software, he clicked on a different tab. YouTube search. He typed, "History of the Queen's Guard." What followed was an hour-long deep dive into the centuries-old tradition. Logan learned about the origins of the household division, the Battle of Waterloo, the symbolism behind the red tunic, and how every guard was also a combat-trained soldier. These weren't hired actors. They were servicemen, veterans, patriots. By the time the video ended, Logan wasn't smiling. Back at the palace grounds, tourists continued their daily visits. But something was different now. Word of the prank had spread fast. Local news stations replayed the clip in slow motion, highlighting Thomas's poise and presence. Even international media picked it up. British Guard shuts down foolish prank with 1 step and 3 words. A mother visiting from Italy explained to her teenage son, "Guards like that represent history, discipline, honor. You don't joke with people who carry the weight of a nation." And inside the guardhouse, Thomas sipped tea silently as his fellow guards chuckled over the online coverage. "You're famous now," one of them teased. "Want me to get your autograph?" Thomas simply shrugged. "I did what any of us would have done." But he couldn't deny the satisfaction of knowing that, for once, the world had paused to appreciate the meaning behind their silence. 2 days later, Logan returned to Buckingham Palace, not with a prank in mind, but with an apology. He waited quietly near the barrier, hands in his pockets, camera left at the hotel. When the changing of the guard ceremony began, and Thomas once again took his place among the crimson line, Logan stood still. He didn't wave. He didn't film. He just watched. And as the guards marched in precise formation, he felt something unfamiliar stir within him. Not guilt exactly, but reverence. A kind of awakening. When the guards stopped and the crowd hushed, Logan stepped back respectfully. A boy next to him whispered, "Why don't they ever smile?" Logan, without thinking, replied, "Because sometimes protecting something serious means being serious yourself." The boy looked up at him, eyes wide. "Are they allowed to talk?" "Only when they need to," Logan said. "And trust me, when they do, you'll know it matters." Later that evening, Logan sat once more by the hotel window, this time writing something he hadn't in years. A letter. It read, "To the guard I disrespected, I now understand that your silence isn't weakness. It's strength. And your movement wasn't a reaction, but a lesson. You didn't have to say anything more than what you did. But I will say what I should have said that day. I'm sorry. Thank you for doing your duty, even when people like me make it harder." He folded it neatly and addressed it to the household division headquarters. Then he opened his YouTube channel, not to upload the prank, but to post a new kind of video. Its title, "The Day I Disrespected a Royal Guard and What He Taught Me." The thumbnail wasn't flashy, just a still image of the red uniform. No water guns, no dramatic fonts. The video began with Logan's face, somber and honest. No sound effects, no background music. "Today's video isn't a prank," he said. "It's a confession." And in the final frame, instead of his usual sign-off, he wrote, "Some men earn silence, others break it to protect something sacred. I met one of those men, and I won't forget him." The following week, Logan's video titled, "The Day I Disrespected a Royal Guard and What He Taught Me," surpassed 2 million views. But unlike his usual content, the comments weren't filled with laughing emojis or prank suggestions. Instead, they were filled with words like respect, maturity, and finally. One viewer wrote, "This is what growth looks like. Thanks for showing young people that it's okay to admit you were wrong." Another said, "You didn't just prank a guard. You tried to mock tradition, and you were humbled by it. That takes courage to admit." But perhaps the most impactful comment came from someone claiming to be the sister of a former guard. "My brother served in silence for years. We always thought it didn't matter. This video made me cry. Thank you for showing the world what these men represent." Logan read every comment, slowly, thoughtfully, and somewhere between the scrolling and the silence, something began to settle in him, a sense of responsibility, not just to his audience, but to the people he filmed, the people who lived the values he used to treat like punchlines. Meanwhile, within the polished walls of Wellington Barracks, the guards were gathered for a quiet evening briefing. The atmosphere was more relaxed than usual. A tablet was passed around with Logan's video queued up. Some guards rolled their eyes. Others chuckled. Thomas watched silently as Logan's apology played out, genuine and unscripted. "I crossed a line," Logan said on screen. "I thought it would be funny. I thought nothing would happen. But I didn't realize how much meaning stood behind that uniform. Until it looked me in the eye and reminded me what respect really is." When the video ended, no one spoke for a moment. Then, Sergeant Rhodes turned to Thomas and said, "Well, looks like you made an impression." Thomas didn't smile, but he did nod. "I didn't do anything special," he said simply. "I just did what we're trained to do. And that's what made it special." A few days later, a letter was delivered to the guardhouse. It was the one Logan had written, neatly folded, respectfully worded, and bearing his real signature. No username, no brand, just a man owning up to a mistake. Thomas didn't reply. He didn't need to. Respect had already been earned, on both sides. The prank that was meant to humiliate became a lesson that resonated far beyond the palace gates. Tourists who came afterward looked at the guards differently. Children didn't just wave, they saluted. Influencers who had once joked about trying to make a guard laugh now thought twice. And Logan's channel? It changed too. Not dramatically. He still created content. But now, it came with a conscience. He featured real stories, met with veterans, and even created a mini docuseries titled Unshakable: Silent Heroes Around the World. The water gun incident became a turning point, not just for him, but for how his audience saw service, silence, and strength. And every now and then, a commenter would write, "This all started because of a guard who took one step and changed someone's life." Because sometimes the most powerful movements don't come from shouting. They come from stillness that refuses to be mocked. They come from men like Thomas Hawthorne. Respect isn't given, it's earned. And tradition isn't a costume, it's a code. So tell us, if you were in Guard Hawthorne's place, would you have reacted the same way? Or would you have stayed silent? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We've got more incredible stories about honor, discipline, and the unsung heroes who remind us why respect still matters.